Hello, my name's Anne and I live in Scotland, actually in an old jail and police station and where the policemen used to live. And I'd like to share a story that I heard from a girl called Nour, who was 10 at the time in Gaza. And I am so honoured to be retelling it to you. A long time ago, there was a king and a queen, and they had 2 sons, and then they were blessed with a daughter. She was lovely just from the beginning. She had blue eyes and blonde hair, and as they usually did with the children, they asked the fairies what might be in the future for their daughter. And sadly, the fairies said she could cause the death of her 2 brothers. Oh no! What were they to do? They asked their advisors, the wise men in the court, and they all said, put her to death. But they couldn't do that. And then they'd heard that there was this hermit who lived in the deep dark woods in their kingdom, and he always gave good advice. So they went to him and told him their problem. And he said, build a tower. Build a tower, and there she must live, and she must never come out of the tower. And so that's what they did. They built the tower. It was a fine tower with a window looking out on the kingdom, and there she was brought up. And even though she was confined to the tower, she was good and kind and such a lovely person. But time passed, and sadly the king died, and not long after, as often happens with people who have been married for a long time, his wife followed. And so the oldest boy became king. And the first thing he did was set his sister free from the tower. And she had come to marriageable age. And he said to her, who would you like to marry? Well, it's a bit difficult. You've never been out of a tower. You've never seen anything of the kingdom except what you can see out of a window. And her brothers had gone and visited her and talked to her and her mum and dad, but she had seen one time in a distance this handsome man was riding a horse, and he was wearing looked like peacock feathers. She reckoned with his kingly stance that he was a king. The king of the peacocks. That's who I'd like to marry, said Rosette. Well, I didn't know where that was. So the king and the girl's brother, they set off to find him and had a portrait painted of her that showed how beautiful she was. She was not only beautiful on the outside, she was beautiful on the inside. And they left her in charge of the kingdom along with the advisors. And off they set. And they travelled and they travelled until they came to some beautiful trees. And in the trees were peacocks. I don't know if you've ever seen a peacock, but their feathers are so beautiful. Unfortunately, their voices aren't there. But they are beautiful, and they reckon this must be the kingdom of the peacocks. So it seemed that the peacocks were kind of guiding them down this road. And there they came to a beautiful castle and a small settlement. And everybody there, they weren't all peacocks, although there were some, but the people wore peacock-coloured clothes with peacock feathers in their hair, in their clothes. And then, as they watched, there came a golden carriage. And there in the golden carriage was the king of the peacocks. Now, it was most unusual to have anybody find the kingdom of the peacocks. And the king commanded his carriage to stop. And he said to the two, very well, who carried themselves very well, the two young men, and he said, "Where have you come from?" And they said, "We have come to ask if you would marry our sister Rosette, the princess. She saw you from a distance once and has fallen in love with you. Would you marry her?" And they showed him the portrait of the girl with the blonde hair and the blue eyes. And he said, "Is she kind? Is she wise?" And the brother said, oh yes, she is. Just as she looks, so she is." And so they sent a message by dove, a pigeon, and the girl was told what direction to come and how she could get to the kingdom. And with her went her nurse and the nurse's daughter. So they set off by boat because they found that that would be the quickest way to get there. Now, although she was good and kind, her nurse was not, and neither was her daughter. She was very unkind, and the daughter was full of herself and didn't think of anybody but herself, and thought she was very beautiful, even though she was really very ugly, outside and in. And so the boat set off, and when Rosette was asleep, the nurse went up to the pilot, and she said to the pilot, "Would you like to make lots of money?" "Oh, yes," said the pilot, I would, but what do I have to do for it?" "Well," said the nurse, "if you throw the princess out of the boat, because she can't swim, she's only ever lived in a tower, then my daughter can take her place, and she will become queen in the kingdom of the Peacocks. I'll give you lots of money." Well, the pilot thought, lots of money. And sadly, yes, you've guessed it, he did it. Picked her up, she wasn't that heavy, and she threw her out of the boat. But what he didn't know, and what the nurse didn't know, was that the bed was made from phoenix feathers, which are from a magical creature, and they float, they do not sink. So the girl was thrown into the water with her wee dog. She'd a toty wee dog who always slept on her bed. I know some people don't like that, but she liked the toty wee dog on her bed. It was a lovely wee dog. And it was sound asleep too. And then off sailed the boat very fast. And the girl dressed herself in the princess's clothes with her diamonds and rubies, and got to the kingdom of the Peacocks, and they presented themselves to the king of Peacocks. "And here is the Princess Rosette," said the nurse. And the girl said, "I'm starving, I'm hungry, bring me some food, stop fussing about, get me food." And the king of the Peacocks said, "She doesn't look a bit like her portrait, and she is not kind and good-hearted." And he summoned the two brothers who were waiting, making preparations for the wedding. He said, "You've lied to me, it's all lies, she's ugly, she's unkind, and she's nothing like you said she was. Off to the dungeons with them." But, said the brother, but that's not. But he wouldn't listen. "Lies," he said, "lies." Meanwhile, you would have thought the girl would be a long way behind, but she wasn't. Because when her bed fell onto the fast flowing river, it floated, and the little dug could feel it. The feather bed, it was very choppy, and the wee dog started to bark. Are you good at barking? Can you give me a wee toady wee dog bark? Ruff, ruff. Sometimes wee dogs can be very loud, and this wee dog was loud. Ruff, ruff. It was trying to tell its mistress what had happened, and she woke up and she looked around her, and she was on this huge big river, bigger than the River Clyde that we have near Glasgow. Oh, it was so big, and she could not swim. Oh no. But guess who had heard the wee duck barking? And the girl going, oh no. The fishes. And the fishes popped their little heads up and they said, Princess Rosette, Princess Rosette, how can we help you? They pushed their little tails and little fins. She said, get me to the kingdom of the peacocks, the king of the peacocks, as fast as you can. And they did. All the fishes swam around, and they used their pectoral fins. Can you do that? Yes. And their tails. Oh, they were making the tails go so fast, and they positively speeded up the river. So much so that they arrived just after the king had commanded that the two brothers be sent down to the dungeons. And she jumped off her feather bed, which was no end of surprise to the king, to see this beautiful girl in her night shift jump onto the pier. And he said, who might you be? She said, I'm Princess Rosette, and those are my two brothers you sent away for lying. They weren't lying. I'm Princess Rosette, and that girl is the nurse's daughter. Well, send them to the dungeons and bring back the two brothers, but send them down to the dungeons for doing such a wicked thing. But the girl, I told you she was good-hearted. The girl said, no, don't do that. They haven't harmed anybody in the Peacock Kingdom. Spare them. And at that point, the king of the peacocks knew that this girl would be a very good queen, a kind queen, who was not only beautiful on the outside, but beautiful on the inside. And so they were married amidst great celebrations. And the brothers were so pleased to see her, obviously. And she rose wisely and well for all her life. And that's the story that Nour told about Princess Rosette and the kingdom of the peacocks.